so if you've been around these parts before, you'll know that we've talked about the Mongols before, specifically how they conquered half the known world. But that's not really what we're talking about today. Today we're going a bit deeper. More specifically, we're talking about Temujin, the guy who would become Genghis Khan, the title meaning ocean, drinker of the sky. Born in 1162, Temujin grew up amid the conflicts of the Mongolian steppe. His father Yasuge was ambitious, trying to forge his own group into a powerful force among the various tribes that inhabited the grassland. But when Temujin was 9, his father was poisoned, likely by rivals. Now, without the protection of his father, his family was in danger, so they went on the run. And Temujin, he had to grow up fast. In fact, according to legend, during one such escape Temujin killed his brother over a meat dispute. But eventually Temujin and his family, they regrouped. He married, had kids, and started to build a coalition of tribes under his banner. But this wasn't easy. Temujin needed allies, men willing to fight alongside him, and he had to earn their trust, which wasn't easy given that back in the day, the Mongols weren't exactly known for their diplomacy skills. The majority of the time they preferred fighting over talking things out. So instead, Temujin fought to earn their trust, and by 1198 he emerged victorious from a raid against a rival tribe. This victory set him on the path to unite the Mongols under his command, laying the groundwork for what would become the largest contiguous land empire in history. The foundation of the Mongolian Empire, though, was laid not just on the battlefield, but also through marriage. Remember that whole uniting the feuding tribes thing? Yeah, well, that took some serious relationship skills. Temujin's wife Bert played a key role in this process. She wasn't just a pretty face, oh no. She was a diplomat and a negotiator, working tirelessly to maintain alliances. In one instance, she brokered a peace deal between Temujin and the powerful Taijud clan, securing the release of some of Temujin's family members who had been held captive by the Taijud. And speaking of family, let's talk a little bit more about that. Sure, Temujin was busy being a warrior and a diplomat, but he also had a big family. He and Bert had 4 sons and several grandsons, and all of them pitched in to help govern the empire. Gedai, his second son, was particularly helpful. When Temujin became ill in 1227, it was Gedai who stepped up to lead the empire until his father's recovery. Unfortunately, Temujin, aka Genghis Khan, didn't make it. He died under mysterious circumstances during a battle in 1227, but before he kicked the bucket, he spent a lot of time writing stuff down. He created the Yasa, basically a set of laws and guidelines for how the empire should be run. It covered everything from criminal law to religious tolerance to how to treat women. Granted, some of these rules were a little outdated, like the part where he said widows couldn't remarry, but overall it was a pretty progressive set of laws for the time period. For example, the Yasa guaranteed religious freedom within the empire and promoted gender equality, and this was huge because up until that point, most empires were pretty hostile towards people who did follow the dominant religion, and women were usually treated like property. But Genghis Khan was like, nah, everyone's cool and women can do stuff too. But with Genghis Khan gone, the question was, who would carry on his legacy? His sons, they had different ideas about how the empire should be run, and they were fighting over who should be in charge. It was messy. And when Gedai finally got the top spot, he made it clear that he wanted to continue his dad's work. But that wasn't going to be easy. The Mongol Empire was massive and diverse, and keeping it together required a lot of effort. Plus, there were enemies everywhere. The Western Xia dynasty, the Quraysh Empire, the Kingdom of Jin, they were all looking to take advantage of the internal squabbling, but Gedai was up for the challenge. He assembled a team of advisors to help him govern and launched a series of military campaigns to expand the empire. He also continued his dad's efforts to promote religious tolerance and cultural exchange. In fact, he even funded a massive project to translate Buddhist scriptures from India into Mongolian. But as the Mongol Empire grew, so did the pressure on Gedai. The further away the provinces were from the center of power, the harder it was to control them. And to make matters worse, Gedai was a bit of a party animal. He loved to feast and drink and have a good time, and this didn't go over well with the more conservative members of the empire, especially his brother Guduk. Eventually, the tension between them became too much, and Guduk launched a rebellion. With the empire on the verge of civil war, Ojide knew he needed help. He reached out to a guy named Batui, who was basically the empire's chief security officer, and together they managed to put down the rebellion and secure Ojide's position as the Great Khan. However, the victory came at a cost. Ojide died in 1241 while on a military campaign against the Khwarezmid Empire, and with his death, the Mongol Empire entered a period of decline. His brother Guyuk tried to keep things together, but he was never able to fully control the empire. And after he died in 1248, the Mongols split into 4 separate khanates. Although the empire was disintegrating, Mongolia remained home to many vibrant cities. In fact, in the mid-13th century, the city of Karakorum was a hub of trade and culture. The city was founded in 1220 by Genghis Khan as the capital of the Mongolian Empire. Though it was never a huge metropolis, it was an important administrative and commercial center. In its heyday, the city was home to merchants, diplomats, and scholars from all over Asia. In the 13th century, the famous traveler William of Rubrek visited Karakorum, and he described it as a, quote, pleasant city, well built and large. He also noted the city's many bazaars, mosques and churches, reflecting the religious diversity of its population. In addition to being a center of trade and diplomacy, Karakorum was also an important religious center. It was home to a number of monasteries and temples, including the famous Erdene Zu monastery, which was founded in the 16th century and served as a major center of Tibetan Buddhism. It is the 13th century and you find yourself in the bustling city of Lhasa. It is a vital stop along the Silk Road, a crossroads of cultures and commerce where the caravan routes from China to the west converge. Nestled amidst palm groves and shimmering canals, this oasis city throbs with activity. Merchants from the Far East unload bales of silk and porcelain, while Indian traders display their spices and Persian merchants showcase their carpets and glassware. The air is alive with the murmur of many languages and the aroma of exotic goods. The city is a microcosm of the world, a tapestry of people from different lands, religions and customs. It's a place where ideas are exchanged, religions mingle and fortunes are made. Here in Lhasa, the caravans rest, the travelers refresh and fortunes are made. The city is not immune to the effects of climate change, however. In recent years, rising temperatures and dwindling water resources have posed significant challenges to the city's agricultural output and way of life. The scorching heat distorts the horizon and relentless sandstorms threaten to engulf the city in swirling dust clouds. Yet despite these challenges, the spirit of Lhasa endures. Its residents adapt and innovate, drawing strength from their deep connection to the land and each other. The mighty Mongols would eventually conquer the area, but their empire would eventually crumble as well. The descendants of Genghis Khan grew soft, becoming more interested in luxury and debauchery than conquest. In fact, the last great-grandson of Genghis Khan, Monkey, he commissioned the construction of a new capital, a magnificent city named Khanbaliq, later known as Beijing. He wanted a place that was grand and imposing, worthy of a mighty empire. And so in 1267, construction began. Khanbaliq was designed to be the jewel of the Mongol Empire, a city of contrasts where the rugged nomadic traditions of the steppe met the sophistication of the cosmopolitan East. The city was a blend of Mongolian and Chinese architecture with towering wooden buildings adorned with intricate carvings set against the backdrop of rugged mountains and rolling grasslands. I am the wind on the steppe, I have no king. I have no master, I am the wind on the steppe. I blow where I please, cold, raw, and untamed. I have been with the Mongols for generations, molding their lives, whipping their tents, keeping their sheep from freezing. I am the wind on the steppe. I have seen empires rise. I have watched them fall. I have carried the cries of kings and the pleas of the condemned. I am the wind on the steppe, and my song is endless. But once beneath me, beneath my restless song, there was a boy. He was born of a small tribe on the edge of the known world. The year wasn't important. It was a time of snow, ice, and hardship. His father was a chief Yasuge and his mother Holan. The boy had brothers and sisters, a life of tending sheep and horses, days without warmth. Then the father died, poisoned by enemies, leaving the family without guidance and alone. I was there that day. I felt the fear in the woman's heart. I heard the screams of the children. I saw the vacant stare in the eyes of the eldest son. Yasuge was right. The boy Temujin, the eldest, shouldered responsibility even at 7 years old. He became the head of the family. He fought with his half-brother over food and accidentally killed him. Was it murder? Perhaps only the steppe knows. Such things happen here. It is harsh, it is unforgiving, it demands strength. I saw that strength in the boy. I sensed his loneliness. Soon the family was abandoned by their own kind, left to freeze on the edge of the world. You want to hear about Genghis Khan. You want to hear about his victories, his armies, his empire. I can tell you these things, but let me tell you first about the childhood that shaped him. I am the wind on the steppe. I carry stories. I carry memories. I remember the boy Temujin, the one who became Genghis Khan, the boy who struggled to survive, to protect his family, to honor his father. He and his mother pulled their 2 remaining younger siblings along with them as they traveled from place to place, eating whatever they could find and sleeping under the open sky. Temujin hunted mice and marmots and sang as he stalked them. He chased rabbits and hares. Sometimes he caught them, sometimes he didn't. This was the rhythm of his life. Hunt, hope, hunger. He slept next to his mother, not daring to close his eyes too long lest he dream of meat or milk. For dreams bring both joy and suffering. One night a traveling merchant named Kasad Hoja came upon the family. He shared his food, his news, his fire. When he learned about the boy's lineage, he offered to take them in, to raise them, to make sure they survived. So Temujin and his siblings went to live with the merchant and his wife Turel, while their mother stayed behind to care for her father. This separation was hard for Temujin. He missed his mother terribly, but he knew it had to be this way. He lived with Kasar Hoda and his wife until he was 16, learning skills and gathering knowledge. All the while, he never forgot the pain of abandonment, the sting of rejection. These memories fueled him, drove him to succeed. When Temujin was 19, a group of bandits attacked Kazim's caravan. Temujin and his companions defended the caravan. Temujin displayed courage and skill, leading the defense against the attackers. During the fight, he saved the life of a fellow warrior named Jamuka. It was an intense battle, but they managed to defeat the bandits. But not all was well. The fighting spirit within Temujin continued to grow. Finding no outlet, his foster father couldn't control him anymore. And so Temujin, his wife and his friends left the caravan and returned to their former life of wandering. In their travels they encountered Jamuka again. By this time Jamuka had gathered a following of his own. He recognized Temujin's abilities and convinced him to unite their forces. They formed a brotherhood, swearing loyalty and sharing secrets. Jamuka even gave his daughter Bort to Temujin as a wife. Together they grew Jamuka's clan, gaining followers and influence. But soon, a disagreement arose between them, causing the once loyal brothers to become sworn enemies. The rift widened, leading to battles and bloodshed. Tensions remained high. After a fight, Temujin retreated with a small group of loyalists, including his wife and the one he called his brother, Yabai. They fled into the forest near the river, hiding among the trees and rocks, but tragedy struck during their escape. Borte was captured by a rival clan. Temujin was devastated. His wife was gone, his dignity wounded. But there was nothing he could do. He had to focus on survival. With only a few loyal men, he moved through the forests, hunting animals for food, hiding from danger. Yet fate turned in Temujin's favor. One night, as he camped by a river, he met a man named Gelm. This chance encounter proved pivotal. Gelm was part of a larger group called the Khairite, who shared food and companionship with Temujin and his men. When Temujin asked for help to rescue his wife, the Khairite agreed. Together they attacked and defeated the Tatars, reuniting Temujin with his wife. Borte had been violated by a kidnapper, but she had resisted, giving birth to a baby boy, which she concealed from her captor. Despite the pain and trauma of her experience, Borte showed resilience. The baby boy, whom everyone believed to be the son of Temujin's enemy, turned out to be his. In the years that followed, Temujin and his allies continued to grow in numbers, solidifying their strength and influence on the steppe. Throughout this journey, Temujin kept his composure, even in the darkest moments. He didn't just think about himself, but considered the needs of others. This was the leader he was destined to be, even if he didn't know it yet. Afterward, Temujin visited his birthplace, the place where he and his family suffered greatly, enduring bitter cold and hunger. Now he stood taller, stronger. His eyes held the wisdom of a mature man. Looking out at the vast expanse of the steppe, he felt a deep connection to the land and its people. Here, where he'd faced his greatest challenges, he realized he truly belonged. This was where his story began, and now he was returning to it, ready to write the next chapter. Temujin looked out over the steppes, his gaze steady. He knew his people had endured enough suffering. It was time for change. He wanted to unite all the nomadic tribes, creating a powerful army that would sweep across the land. However, there was a problem. The clans were divided, always arguing, never uniting. Temujin wanted to fix that. He summoned leaders from each clan to a meeting. At first they refused to come, thinking they could dominate the others. But when they arrived and saw the unity among Temujin's followers, they had to rethink their strategy. They knew trying to dominate such a united force would be pointless. Over time, Temujin gained the respect and trust of most of the leaders, except for one, Jamuka. But Jamuka's defiance only made Temujin stronger. Jamuka's arrogance blinded him to the growing support for Temujin, leading to conflict. Temujin emerged victorious, capturing Jamuka's sister as a trophy. Jamuka fled, cursing Temujin and vowing revenge. Soon though, the other leaders accepted Temujin as their supreme leader, marking a significant moment in history. The fragmented tribes were becoming one. Temujin took a new name, Genghis Khan, meaning ocean-going ruler. He was no longer just a leader, he was a unifier, laying the foundation for a new Mongol Empire. And as the flames of his empire flickered to life, the wind on the steppe, felt the shift in the air. The cold, harsh winds that had once whipped across the barren grasslands were now carrying the whispers of a new era. The age of Genghis Khan had begun. The boy who once huddled with his siblings for warmth was now leading a united nation. I carried the tales of his battles, his victories, his rise to power. The songs of his warriors echoed in my song. The names of his enemies faded into the legends carried by the wind. From the frozen wastelands to the distant mountains, the rumble of drums and clash of steel resonated across the steppe. The boy who became Genghis Khan had done the impossible. He had united the tribes, he had created an empire, and as the sun rose and set over the endless grasslands, I whispered his name to the world. Genghis Khan, the name that would strike fear into the hearts of kings and echo through the ages. The wind on the steppe had found its voice, the art of conquering worlds. Now we enter the great tent. Inside sits a wooden table piled high with maps and papers. Quills scratching across parchment, men with serious faces passing words from mouth to ear. At the head of the table sits a man half turned away from us, deep in thought. He wears fine garments, a golden crown, his face impassive. He is Genghis Khan, founder of the Mongol Empire, conqueror of nations. How did he do it? How did he bring such order to chaos? How did he conquer the largest contiguous land empire in history? And how did he translate that victory into lasting rule? How does a man become a legend? We'll look at the tools he used, the ideas that made him irresistible to followers, and the ways he changed as he encountered new lands. Ideas to rule them all. The secret to Genghis Khan's success lay partly in adapting to the many different lands and peoples he met. He ruled with a kind of universalism. That is, while he had his own Mongol laws and customs, he also incorporated ideas from other cultures as he met them. Take for example the Yasavis was the name given to the written law code that Genghis Khan brought to the Mongols. It defined crimes, punishments, even civil matters, and was one of the first legal codes in world history. But it wasn't the only one. As he traveled and met other cultures, he borrowed from them, taking the best ideas and applying them to his own way of ruling. He adapted Persian ideas about weights and measures, Islamic concepts of banking, and even Chinese methods of accounting. By adopting these techniques, he presented himself as a ruler open to good ideas wherever they appeared, and that image drew many people to his side. Power of the written word. Speaking of writing, let's talk about the art of record-keeping, especially in the early modern period. Record-keeping and literacy were essential to building a stable and prosperous society. Leaders began to keep detailed accounts of everything from taxes collected to goods traded to military victories. They kept track of births, deaths, marriages, land ownership, really anything that could affect a person's standing or wealth in the empire. These records weren't just for reference either, they were a way to exert control. A record keeper could check a merchant's claim of how much silk he sold in a certain year, or confirm whether a noble really owned a certain plot of land. This system helped make sure everyone paid their taxes, upheld contracts, and stayed in their social class. It was basically the original form of due diligence, making sure the world understood. Genghis Khan, too, understood the power of writing. When he sent out ambassadors to negotiate or demand submission from other leaders, he wanted them to make a strong impression, and he wanted those leaders to remember what he had said. So he employed a technique called yasakoton, which means words like thunder. It involved sending a group of men who rode up to a leader's palace on horseback, surround it, and shout the message at the top of their lungs. It was a dramatic and memorable way to get attention. Plus, by shouting the message, the ambassadors ensured that every single person around heard exactly what Genghis Khan had to say. So that's a quick tour of some of the ideas and techniques that helped shape Genghis Khan's empire. From universalism to record-keeping yasakoton, he used every tool at his disposal to build a stable and prosperous state, and it worked. His empire stretched from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe, encompassing a huge variety of peoples and cultures. But how did he keep it all together once he conquered it? Well, that required a whole new set of skills. So let's explore how the Mongols built a post-conquest world. A world connected. The Mongol Empire was huge. It spanned across Asia and Eastern Europe, and connecting such a large area was a challenge, but the Mongols took on the task enthusiastically. First off, they established yam or postal stations every 20 miles along roads throughout the empire. Here's how it worked. Riders would leave the capital with messages or packages and hand them off to the next station where fresh horses would be ready. This way, important news or goods could travel quickly and reliably across the empire. But that wasn't all. The Mongols also built a network of trading centers, making sure that merchants and traders had a safe place to rest and trade. These centers were strategically located along major trade routes, providing merchants with easy access to the goods and services they needed. But perhaps the greatest achievement of the Mongol postal system was its ability to connect different cultures. Merchants and travelers from across the empire could meet, exchange ideas, and build relationships with people from distant lands. This helped promote cultural diffusion, spreading ideas and technologies across the empire and beyond. Pax Mongolica, the Mongol Empire, was massive. It stretched from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe, and keeping such a big area under control was no easy feat. But somehow the Mongols managed to create a relatively stable and secure environment across their vast domains. They achieved this through a combination of military force, diplomacy, and a commitment to public order. While the Mongols were certainly a violent people, they weren't just conquering for the sake of it. They generally incorporated the people they conquered into their empire, granting them a degree of self-rule and allowing them to keep their culture and religion. The Mongols were also pragmatically diplomatic, often using marriage alliances to cement peace between different groups. But perhaps the most important thing they did was focus on public order. The Mongols established a series of laws and regulations that applied equally to everyone in the empire, regardless of their social status. They also created a system of courts to enforce these laws and ensure that everyone followed them. The result was a relatively stable and secure empire that allowed trade and cultural exchange to flourish. But wait, there's more. The Mongols were also pretty chill. Despite being nomadic horse herders, they had a surprisingly relaxed attitude towards work and leisure. They valued hospitality and often invited guests to share in their food and drink. They also had a strong sense of community and were known for their generosity and loyalty to one another. Overall, the Mongols' combination of pragmatism, diplomacy, and chill vibes led to a relatively peaceful and prosperous empire that would influence the world for centuries to come. the heart of the empire. While Genghis Khan was responsible for uniting the Mongol tribes and launching the empire's early conquests, it was his successor Ogedei Khan who really fleshed out the administrative system that made the empire run. Ogedei was a brilliant administrator, and he took steps to make the empire more centralized and efficient. He divided the empire into provinces, each of which was ruled by a governor appointed by the Khan. He also established a professional bureaucracy, complete with a civil service exam to ensure that qualified people were in charge. Ogedei also continued his father's policy of religious tolerance, which helped to stabilize the empire by keeping potential sources of conflict at bay. But it wasn't just about efficiency and stability. Ogedei also wanted to make life better for the people in his empire. He invested heavily in infrastructure, building roads, bridges, and canals to connect the far reaches of his empire. He also established a postal system that allowed messages to be sent quickly and reliably across the empire. Ogedei's efforts to improve the lives of his subjects paid off. The Mongol Empire reached its greatest extent under his rule, and the people in his empire enjoyed a period of peace and prosperity. Oh, and not to mention, he hosted the biggest party the world had ever seen. Yes, the Storyteller's Ball, where ambassadors and scholars from across the empire came together to exchange ideas and goods. It was a celebration of the diversity and richness of Mongol culture, and it wouldn't be the last. Under subsequent Khans, the empire continued to thrive. Trade flourished, cities grew, and the arts and sciences flourished. The Mongol Empire was truly a world connected, and that brings us to the end of our journey to the heart of the post-conquest world. We hope you've enjoyed exploring the fascinating history and culture of the Mongols and their impact on the world. If you want to continue learning about the Mongols, there are plenty of resources available. You can read books, watch documentaries, or even visit museums to learn more about their history, culture, and legacy. Remember, the story of the Mongols is not just about warfare and conquest. It's also about a vibrant culture, a complex society, and a unique way of life. So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep learning. The world is full of fascinating history, and we're just getting started. Thanks for joining us on this journey through history. We hope you've learned something new and maybe even discovered a passion for history. If you enjoyed this experience, please don't hesitate to share it with others. And who knows, maybe you'll inspire them to join us on future adventures through time. Until then, happy exploring. We close our eyes to scenes of campfires, the air filled with smoke, the smell of wood smoke and roasting meat hanging heavy in the night. We hear crickets chirping, a dog barking in the distance, sounds of nighttime in the countryside, something familiar, something simple. We are lulled into a sense of relaxation, of security. We feel miles away from danger, and then, suddenly, the serenity is shattered. A blood-curdling scream pierces the night. We start, our hearts pounding in our chests. Then another scream, closer this time, followed by a commotion outside. The scene shifts abruptly. We find ourselves at the edge of a forest, a gnarled old tree looming over us, its branches clawing at the night sky like desperate fingers. Below us, a dark shape writhes on the forest floor. What is it, human or animal? Big enough to cast a sizable shadow even in the pale moonlight, but still to be an animal. Fear grips us as we strain to make out the details, to understand what horror unfolds before us. As our eyes adjust to the dim light, the truth becomes clear. It's a man slumped against the tree, his body contorted in a silent scream, his throat slashed open, his eyes wide with terror. We stumble back, overwhelmed by the brutality of it all, the raw violence that stains the forest floor, the smell of blood heavy in the air, mingling with the sweet scent of pine needles and damp earth. We're frozen in place, unable to tear our gaze away from the macabre tableau, but we can't stay. Our legs begin to move without our conscious direction, pulling us away from the grisly scene. We run, crashing through underbrush, desperate to escape the haunting image seared into our minds. The screams echo in our ears, amplifying our terror. Finally, we burst out of the forest, gasping for breath, the horrors of the night clinging to us like a shroud. Welcome to my channel. Today let us embark on a journey back in time to explore the disturbing reality of nighttime during the Mongol Empire. Imagine yourself now, far from the grazing herds and wool-walled tents of the steppes. You are approaching a camp, but not just any camp. It spreads like a city of silk, with hundreds of gairs and pavilions arranged in perfect order. The air smells not only of smoke and animals, but of incense and parchment, saddle leather, and distant spices. This is the imperial encampment, the temporary but formidable seat of the Mongol elite. And in the center, beneath a white felt tent, stitched with gold thread, sits a man called Kagan, the great Khan and the quiet machine of empire. In the time of Genghis Khan, and even more so under his grandson Kublai, the Mongol court was not a place of random plunder, but of quiet, calculated administration. Power was dispersed, like the wind, spreading in all directions, carried by trusted messengers, bound by law and written decree. The Khan himself might sit in silence for hours, listening to emissaries, inspecting scrolls, weighing decisions. He wore no crown, no jeweled robe, only a finely made deal, clean and understated, because in this world, power did not shout, it did not need to, it spoke through symbol and gesture, a slight nod to a general, a finger drawn across a map, a pesa, a tablet of gold or silver, passed to a trusted official, granting him the right to move freely across the empire, to requisition horses, food, and shelter, in the Khan's name. Such small things, yet they moved armies, built roads, shifted entire economies, court ritual and global reach. Though born on horseback, the Mongol elite learned quickly how to rule an empire that included cities, rivers, and faraway coasts. And so, they adopted rituals. Some borrowed from the Chinese, some invented anew. The Yasa Genghis Khan's great law code shaped court life with a blend of discipline and mercy. It emphasized order, respect, duty to the Khan and the collective, and it was enforced, not with noise but with quiet certainty. Inside the court, life moved slowly. Scribe dipped brushes into ink made from pine soot and ground bone. Scrolls were unrolled, sealed, and re-rolled, carried in wooden tubes. Courtiers spoke in soft voices. Slippers padded over felted floors. There were no crowds, no cheers, no debates, only the slow unfolding of policy. And yet, beyond those silk walls, the effects were staggering. A single decision made here might change the language spoken in a distant town, the tax paid by a farmer or the fate of an entire kingdom. Contrasts between power and pasture. Now, imagine again that quiet herder, tending sheep beside a river. He may never see the Khan, he may never read the law, but he lives beneath its shadow. If he steals a goat, the punishment comes. If a bandit wrongs him, and he calls out to the local judge, justice arrives. Not always perfectly, not always gently, but it arrives because the order of empire, however vast, was designed to reach even the edges. This contrast between the elite and the everyday, between tent palaces and animal pens, shaped the texture of life across the empire. And yet it was never entirely separate. Nobles still rode horses, Khans still drank fermented milk. Even the most powerful man alive still lived in a movable tent, still smelled of felt and fire, still listened to the wind at night. Women of the court, and we must not forget the women. Unlike many courts in the medieval world, Mongol elite women often held significant influence, both in the private and political sphere. Figures like Sorgatani Beki, mother of Kublai Khan, were not mere figures behind curtains. They managed estates, advised on state affairs, commanded loyalty. A widow might rule her son's lands until he came of age. A queen might arrange alliances, negotiate peace, or speak in the Khan's council. Within the gear she might pour the first bowl of milk as a ritual offering, or host foreign envoys. Her voice, though not loud, could sway decisions that affected entire nations. These women lived between worlds, domestic and diplomatic, ceremonial and strategic. They were not visible on maps, but they shaped the lines drawn upon them. Death and rest beyond the reach of time, and what of death? For the elite, death was not merely an end, it was a transition to a sacred state. The funerals of great Khans were conducted in deep secrecy. It is said that those who escorted Genghis Khan's body to his final resting place were forbidden to speak of it, that the horses trampled the earth flat, that trees were planted atop the site, that silence was kept not out of fear, but reverence. To this day, the grave of Genghis Khan has never been conclusively found. It remains a quiet mystery, hidden in the folds of the steppe, beneath wind and time. And perhaps that is fitting, because the greatest of Mongol rulers returned at last to the earth they once rode upon. Dust to dust, wind to wind. The sound of an empire sleeping as night falls on the imperial camp, the firelight dims. Silk banners flutter softly, horses stamp quietly in the distance. Scribe pack away their scrolls. The Khan, perhaps, sits with a shallow bowl in hand, gazing into the embers. No one speaks. The weight of empire settles around them like a woolen blanket, not heavy but certain. The day is done. The empire still stands, and somewhere, out on the steppe, a herder dreams of horses, a child learns to ride, and the wind whispers through the grass, carrying stories and silence. Conclusion: a gentle farewell across the steppes. And so now, as we leave behind the steppes of the Mongol Empire, from the rhythm of daily life, to the footsteps of generals, from the mystery of stone inscriptions, to the quiet order of power, we return gently to our own time, where the wind is still, the lights are dim, and sleep, like a silent rider, draws near. The past is a vast place, but tonight we've wandered only slowly. No rush, no battle cries, only the calm thrum of history. Beneath the stars, rest now. The empire will still be there, when you wake. So ends our journey through a day in the life of the Mongol Empire. From the tranquil beauty of a sunrise over the steppes to the somber quiet of a moonlit forest, we've witnessed the order, the power, and the profound solitude that defined this remarkable era. Remember the graceful dance of horsemen across the plains, the methodical precision of the Khan's court, and the haunting specters that stalked the night. As you drift off to sleep, let these memories linger in your mind, a testament to an empire that echoed across the ages. And if you enjoyed this unique journey through time, Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more immersive historical tales. Until next time, farewell.